Hello, everybody. Welcome to Resilience plus Rise, the podcast where we transform adversity into triumph, illuminate the extraordinary potential within all of us. I'm your host, Thomas Scaria. I'm a coach, I'm an ultra marathoner, and a firm believer on your next or maybe a current powerful chapter. Resilience plus Rise is not just a podcast, it's a movement, a space where ordinary lives becomes extraordinary inspiration. Together, we explore the transformative power of resilience and the mind shifts that turn the challenges into opportunities. This podcast is a companion to my upcoming book, Resilience Plus Rise 26.2 Transformative Milestones to Unleash the Marathon of Your Life Mindset. It's coming early 2025. Here we amplify stories of hope, perseverance, and success to inspire your journey. Today, I am honored
Mhm.
to host Genius Turner. There will be a lot of y'all who have heard about Genius, and to those who have not heard about Genius, tough luck. He is a true luminary whose impact spans from academia to online platforms, millions of followers around. He blends spirituality, mathematics, and storytelling into a unique tapestry of wisdom. As I mentioned, with millions of views on platforms like Medium, Quora, Genius is the founder of the acclaimed I Am Genius publication and a celebrated ebook author. And he's known for his works that inspires shift in mindset. One of the books which is freely available on various platforms. I will be putting out the link on my comment section. Is Heaven on Earth Code and the Psychological Code. Worth spending some time on it. He's a spiritual teacher. He's a screenwriter. He's a
Mhm.
playwright and a novelist. I don't know if I missed something else, genius, but this is what I heard about you. He brings unparalleled depth into the idea that succeed that isn't just goal. It's a natural result of aligning to your higher potential.
Yes, yes, yes.
So we'd say, what's his mission? It's simply to serve humanity by unlocking the extraordinary, even in the ordinary, encouraging each and every one of us to change the mindset, to change your life. So let's not waste more time. Let's jump directly to Genius Turner. Welcome, Genius. I don't know if I've said anything incorrect in this particular
Ah,
thing, but this is what I could kind of memorize.
what an amazing introduction. I mean, I really appreciate that. What are you? What are you, a Pisces or a Virgo? Let me guess your sign here.
I'm a
Sign.
Leo, but I
Oh,
like to read a lot
okay.
and I make stories. So I
Leader.
remember like that. So that's the way I remember things is that when you make a story about
Yes.
anything, or if
Narrative.
you're like, how do you recollect names? It's usually you create a story.
So you're Leo. Are you August?
August, very much.
August what? Third, fourth? What's your
Ah,
birthday?
it's on the platform. I don't want to say it. It's okay.
The reason I ask you,
Oh,
because
yes, birth date.
pardon,
You said about the birth date.
the birthdays, right? And invariably I tell people, there's a difference whenever I'm asked about astrology. There's a difference between astrology and horoscopes, right?
Hmm.
For instance, if you and I were to have walked down the street and I bump into you, and I say, Brother Thomas, and you say, I'm a Leo, and I say, well, today you're gonna talk to a black guy with dreadlocks. That's horoscopes. I'm not saying that. But
Okay.
astrology, the ancient Babylonians figured out thousands of years ago. We have the sun, right? In relation to the
Yes.
sun, 12 zodiacal houses. So when you're telling me you're born under the Leo sign, which is the dates between July, August, you have certain basic traits of character, most of
True.
which correspond to leadership qualities. That's why so many great leaders are born under the Leo sign. Barack Obama,
Hmm.
Napoleon Bonaparte, Fidel Castro. I mean, that's a whole list of just great leaders who are Leo. So when you tell me you're a Leo, I automatically know you have leadership qualities.
And again, if you're talking about leadership quality, that's one of the attribute I believe as a leader. I don't see it as a leader. I mean, it is, but knowing about the person who is in front of you, doing
Right,
a deep research, acknowledging the greatness who's the person in front of you,
right.
and seeing it from that point of view. So that's the reason is that when I kind of memorize most of the things, but
Mhm.
again, I did not want to uh, make some loose ends,
Right, right.
and so I hope it was not bad. Anyway, genius. Let me
Yeah,
just jump into it.
okay.
So this particular podcast, it will be. It's going to come somewhere. We are already in January, and there are a lot of things which is taking place.
Right.
As my book, we talk about resilience. What's your thoughts from the humanity point of view, which you deeply cherish?
Right.
That people, when they talk about resilience, because resilience is a muscle that everybody more or less has it.
Right.
What can they do to make their life better? Or if you have got your own examples,
Right.
what would you tell the audience?
Wow. That's a great question. Um, whenever I'm asked this question, first and foremost, the first thing that I try to advise people is if you're in a car, right, and I'm riding as your passenger, the first question I would ask you would be what? Where are we going? So but before you can even begin to even fathom dealing with resilience or anything, you have to figure out where are you going in life? What's your purpose? Because it's only
Okay.
once you have your purpose, then you can align everything else to that purpose. So that's the starting point with everything. Each person has to figure out what is their path, what is their purpose, what is the thing towards which they're aiming. Then everything else follows in line. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
And that's invariably the starting point. So once you have your purpose and your goal, again, you can kind of try to harmonize everything in accordance with that.
Interesting. So, especially if you have seen on LinkedIn or any other social media platform, it is just the first week of Jan over here, first, second week of Jan. What we are seeing is that a lot of people, they are putting out, okay, this is the way we should put the purpose. They advise, or these are the steps you should do. They tell people, you know what, if you've not got a purpose, this is the way, this is the best way. This is the way you can build up your abundance. This is the way you can build up your success. This is the way you can build up all the other good things, or however it is. What's your take on that?
So in continuation with what I said earlier about purpose, so I'll tell you this. Although there's roughly 8 billion people in the world, right? That's
Hmm.
8 million thousand. Listen to this. As human beings, in my view, from Aristotle to Buddha, they've all essentially figured out the same thing. As human beings, we all have essentially the same purpose. Are you ready for it? You want me to share it with you?
Please.
Can I get a drum roll? Here it is, Brother Thomas. As a human being, right? We're all here for one reason, and I'll tell it to you. We're all here to realize the truest, highest expression of ourselves as a human being. Let me say it again. The purpose of life is to realize the truest, highest expression of yourself as a human being. And as a consequence of this, if you truly understand what I'm passing along to you, my brother, you'll understand why happiness is a result, not a goal. Let me say it again. Happiness is a result, not a goal. A result of what? A result of corresponding to that purpose. So in other words, as human beings, we're happy to the extent that we realize our full potential. And when I say full potential, Brother Thomas, I mean the entire gamut of our human experience. What is our full potential in terms of our body? Do we work out? What about in terms of our dietary habits? Do we eat well? Do we spend a few moments out the day for mindfulness, meditation? That will determine our level of happiness or not, to the extent that we realize our full potential.
you realize what you just mentioned would make sense to a minuscule percentage of people,
Hmm.
because people, they don't realize their own potentiality. A lot of, I mean, maybe I'm being judgmental over here. Sorry about that. Sorry, guys. But over here, a lot of people, we are so forced by the societal compressions,
Yes.
and we put our benchmarks based on the successes on the neighbor's house,
Right.
or basically what is there on the Fortune magazine, or maybe the magazine which sells for the socialites.
Right.
We imagine what is the dresses we are wearing, what is the type of cars we are wearing. So these, we know they are just material possessions.
Yes.
But genius, what you just mentioned, is a internal process.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, it's the same thing about that egg. The force when an egg breaks from inside, that's when the life comes out.
Right.
If you try to break a egg from outside, the life dies.
Great
And
point.
unfortunately, what I'm seeing is that a lot of people, they are seeing the life being hit from outside, and they are making their judgment, or they're making their calls from there. So
Yes.
when you say about they have to realize, they have to grow, they have to become that particular potentiality.
Right.
The other day, I was had the good fortune of reading, and not rereading, but hearing
Mhm.
Marianne Wilkinson's old book, Return to Love,
Right.
wherein she says everybody is filled with that energy of love. But
Yes.
how many of us want to love a fellow neighbor?
Right.
I tell is that what my ideology is, that we all are angels sent on this earth with one wing.
Yes. Yes.
It is our duty to hold another angel and fly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love how you phrase that. Very poetic, brother. Very
So when we talk about that, if you are when we talk about the general populace, if they want to listen, what would be the steps that you would say if they want to grow themselves
right.
from within? What would you suggest? I'm not asking an advice, but what
Well,
would you suggest, or what have you learned that makes
I'll tell you
people?
this. I'll tell you this. A cousin of mine asked this very question a few days ago as part of his New Year's resolutions. He was like, "What can I do to level up to be better?" And I
Beautiful.
said, "Listen to this. The great philosophers and mystics of the world, right? They've already said everything important that really needs to be said, right? But listen to this, brother Thomas. See, what a genius really does is take what people knew yesterday, KNEW, remove the K, and repackages it as new. You hear me? The
Yep.
wise people have already said everything. So if you look, if you look in religion, if you look in science, right? This guy, right? I gotta figure him. Albert Einstein. They say he was the greatest scientist of all, right? Him and Sir Isaac Newton. What does Albert Einstein tell you his life mission is? I want to know God's thoughts. Everything else is details. Now that's a physicist telling you this. Why is this important? How much is this parallel when Jesus of Nazareth says, I and my Father are one? So, Brother Thomas, when they pick up stones and they're about to stone him, what does he tell them? He says, in your law, it says, ye are gods. Walk with me for a second now. So, if the greatest scientist in history, well, okay, greatest can't be measured, that's subjective. The most celebrated scientist, Albert Einstein, says he wants to know God's thoughts. Everything else is details. The most celebrated religious figure, Jesus of Nazareth, he says, I and my Father are one. I do what I see my Father doing. His entire life is patterned after God. What conclusion can you take away from that, my brother? In other words, whether it's Einstein, whether it's Jesus, even in Hinduism, Lord Krishna, what does he says? To be one with Brahman. Yoga means union. What does
True.
Lao Tzu say? Lao Tzu, the Tao, to become one with the Tao and embody it. So in every religion and science, one is saying hello, the other saying hola, the other saying bonjour. My point is this: to anyone asking me in life, how can they quote unquote level up? All of the great minds throughout history are telling you to some degree, try to tap into a power that's greater than what we call our own and try to mirror your character after it. It's simple, but it's difficult. Again, try to mirror your character after. For those brothers and sisters of mine who are secular, non-religion, okay, then we can say then the supreme being. Try to mirror your life after the supreme being. You say, well, what is the supreme being? Being is just a fancy word for existence, Brother Thomas. We know everything from aardvark to zebra exists. So everything has being. So when we say supreme being, we mean the highest of which our mind can conceive. Now, if we can somehow try to mirror our character after this supreme being, that, listen, you can go to the New Testament. They ask Jesus, where is heaven? What does he tell them? The kingdom of heaven is where? It's within you. It's within you. They're all saying the same thing. And it ties back into trying to realize our fullest potential. That's the answer to the riddle. There's no escaping that human condition. The human condition is set up in such a way, Brother Thomas, when someone says they're happy, that's a byproduct of living in hard with their highest prompting, trying to reach their full potential. If someone says they're sad or depressed, that's the converse. That's a failure to have lived up to this bargain, so to speak. Does that make sense? So that's human. Throughout the day, we can almost do a checklist. If we're feeling a bit down or despondent, that means we're not trying to reach for our highest potential in some way. That's just the way the game is set up.
So here comes the next question.
Yes.
You're filled with all these, and from what I've heard about, I mean, what I've read from your writings, the way you interact with so many different personalities or humans.
Right.
A lot of them, they understand you.
Yes.
But when you see yourself, maybe, I don't know about whether you're reading the newspaper or looking at the news or seeing something, you just you were traveling through the Manhattan subway at this point of time, where you can see the disparity of human life taking place.
Right.
What goes through your mind?
Well, I'll tell you this, Brother Thomas. And again, this guy is very important to me, right? The reason he's very important to me because Albert Einstein, he was truly a free thinker in the highest sense. In other words, his only focus in life was truth, right? And he had a great maxim, Brother Thomas. He says, science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. So I'll tie that into your question. It's 2025, right?
Yes.
Let's conflate religion and science. I call it religious science. This when you combine the two. In 2025, if we go to science, Charles Darwin in his Origin of Species, he breaks down how sapient humans evolved from apes, right?
Yes.
That's Charles Darwin. Now, Brother Thomas, if our DNA sequences is 98% the same as an ape, what does that mean? Say this bottle is 98% filled, right? That means according to Darwin and science, we're 98% ape-like and 2% human. Therein is the challenge, my brother. So that means that we're still evolving. We're
Evolving.
So in 2025, we won't look the same as we will in 2125. My brother, do you know a century ago, it would have been against the law for me to sit down with a Caucasian in a restaurant.
Of course.
But you
Why?
know, within the past decade, there was a black man living in the White House. Think about that for a minute, brother. In 1919, that's when they had women's suffrage. So women couldn't vote until 1919. Do you know in 2016, female won the popular vote by 2 million over her male counterpart? So you wonder, where am I going here? The point that I'm trying to underscore, my brother, you look at history, which is most qualified to reward our research. History is showing that each generation is becoming more godlike. Think about it. I just illustrated a point how 70 years ago, blacks and whites couldn't sit in the same restaurant. And in America, we just had a black president. I just illustrated how women weren't allowed to vote until 1919. In 2016, a female candidate won the popular vote. So what that's telling me is people are becoming, look, vegetarianism is rising. The literacy rate, the global literacy rate is rising. Each generation is taking baby steps. So to answer your question, sure, we still may be crude in 2025. Hey, but we haven't reached the butterfly stage yet. You see, we're still the caterpillar. We need time. So I look at my current state and I realize that's okay, humanity. We just need time to grow. Each generation is getting it more and more and more and more. Like my mother says, she loves to see interracial dating now because in her time they didn't have as much. You see, each generation is becoming more conscious than its predecessor.
Sure.
So to answer your question, that's how I look at it through that lens. Like, okay, we're still taking baby steps. We're still having war. We're still bickering, but eventually we'll get past it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I mean, for me, I've been again. I take looking through different books, talking to people like amazing people like you, and of course, I allow myself to grow more, and that's
Right.
where the magic begins.
Yes, yes.
And so, for a question which just came up is that when you talked about, you spoke about a caterpillar waiting to break the cocoon and become a butterfly.
Yes.
For some reason, suddenly I went through the famous thought of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream.
Yes, yes, yes,
He
yes.
believed in a dream. Now, genius, with your mindset, I know
Right.
it is not just it's not just confined to that head of yours. It goes, the expanse is way more larger, way more
Yes,
bigger, and that's it is coming out in different forms of whether it is your writing, the way you talk to people, etc.
right.
What's your dream?
Wow. Well, my dream in this lifetime is to not only realize my potential, but assist most brothers and sisters possible with reaching their potential. Simple as that. As Plato said, Plato had the great allegory of the cave. Once the chained prisoner was released from the cave, he went back into the cave and tried to
Hmm.
help others come from the cave, right? Hence, when you're in the dark, you can't see, but once you're out, they call it enlightenment. The light turns on.
Yes.
So that's my life's mission, to try to enlighten the most brothers and sisters I can.
Cool. And again, guys, I will be putting out the links of Genius Turner on the comments. Do have a look onto it. So with this, I come to the next particular element is that when you have been reading a lot, you have been talking to a lot of people, etc. But
Mhm.
there would be a lot of times when you go and talk to somebody or you're having a wider audience, there would be a lot of level of skepticism.
Right.
There would be a lot of time of pushback.
Yes.
There would be a lot of times wherein people would be just sniggering at you.
Right.
How do you get resilient about getting further?
Whenever I'm interacting with someone, particularly an audience, I understand that a person's apprehension or understanding can only rise to the level of their consciousness, right?
True.
So I can always empathize if someone's conscious mind may not interact. That's fine. So at the end of the day, people can only relate to you to the degree that their consciousness rise. What Einstein's great insight: you can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it, right?
True.
So that's how I usually meet the audience, and have differing opinions. But again, brother, that ties back into my premise: we're still evolving, right? This is an accretion, natural growth, right? We haven't reached the butterfly stage yet. In fact, my screenplay is called The Last People. Here, I can let you
Okay.
see it.
Is it a movie coming up?
You see, like The Last
Yeah,
People.
yeah, I can see The Last People. Is
The
it a
last,
movie that is coming up?
yeah, there'll be a movie. That I have the stage play finished. I've really been trying to be prolific, brother. With the time allotted to me, and so The Last People is essentially saying that, brother Thomas, we're evolving into a final species. In fact, my biological code, it proves it. It proves it. In 2025, in January 3rd, there biologists. There's biologists in this world who know for certain we are evolving into a final species. My biological code proof. In fact, I didn't originate it. It's in Charles Darwin's Origin of Species. He intimates, right? It's implicit in his work. You have to work it out. He hints at it. Throughout the book, he's hinting at it. He's hinting at it. He's dropping pieces, right? There's something a bit different about these Homo sapiens, right? Something what? Life's been here for over 3 billion years, my brother, right? And in that 3 billion years, there's been over 5 billion different species. It's challenging for us as humans to wrap our mind around what a billion means because it's so abstract. But just think of it like this. 1 billion is 1 million 1,000 times.
True. Mm-hmm.
So that's 1 million 5,000 times. That's how many different species there have been. And of all of those species for that huge amount of time, there's only been one species awake for the show. Did you catch that? It's only been one.
And to think of it, there are people who are just wake up in the morning and they do not know what to do. Sorry
Right,
about that. Sorry
right.
about that. You don't understand because that's what I say is that life is for living, not just for existing. You're given
Yes,
this, been
sir.
given this gift of living. What are we
Yes,
doing about it?
yes, sir.
Talking about what are we doing about it? Could you tell the audience what's in the pipeline for this year, the coming years? What is there? What's the goal? That is the first question. And my second question is that do you have any suggestions for people who are listening to this particular talk on when we talk about consciousness, when we talk about evolving, we talk about getting to the higher self? So these are the two questions which I would like to ask you.
Great, great questions. And by the way, Brother Thomas, you're doing a great job here. It's very it's thoughtful, it's an intimate feel. Great job, man. So to answer your first question, again, to tie back into my life's mission, I'm just getting my work out there from the screenplay to the stage play, and it all ties around that idea, right? We're evolving into a final species. That's set in stone. And once you truly grasp the implications of that, then the final species becomes an archetype. You see, it's an archetype by which we can live our lives, right? It's a model. It's not. In fact, listen to this. When in Christianity, when they say saved, right?
Mhm.
In Revelations, saved, the new heaven, the new earth.
Hmm.
Oh, in Judaism, they call them chosen people. Even Nietzsche, right? The great philosopher, he was an
Philosopher.
atheist. Nietzsche, he had a Superman, the super species, right? Even in Dianetics, Ron L. Hubbard, he has the clear. You notice how every religion, they're all alluding to this evolved form, but they're just using different language for it. So that's my life's mission, is to ground these age-old insights into science, tie it all in. Now, to answer your second question, for any brother or sister out there at home, and they're wondering, in the new year, how is it that I can have that transformation? Well, I'll tell you again. Let's go back to our original insight. The purpose of life is simple. You're here to realize the truest, highest expression of yourself as a human being. So how do you do that? Simple. You compartmentalize, break it down. Mind, body, soul. How do you realize the truest expression of yourself and body? Well, if you can, try to exercise 4 or 5 times a week. Just try to eat healthy. Take it day by day. Mentally, read a few self-help books. If you can meditate, do basic Buddhist meditation. Follow your breath 5-10 minutes a day. That'll help. And when it comes to the soul, just try to be a good person. So that's 3 things. Try to work out a few times a week. Try to do some basic meditation, mindfulness practices, and try to be a good person. If you do those 3 things, I can assure you, your life will have a dramatic shift over the coming months.
Beautiful. And as I would sometimes have, this was asked to me a while back, and I go back to the same ideologies that we all are angels with one wing. Hold another brother or a sister, and you'll see how far you can fly.
I love that. Well put. Well put.
So, with this, Genius, I would like to conclude our session.
Okay.
There are, guys, there are so many different nuggets which we can take away from this particular thing. It is a literal gold mine. And, Genius, I know that this is not going to be the first time we are having a conversation. There'll be many more to come in. And
Yes.
I would be looking forward to that particular element. So, is there any last parting thoughts that you have for the listeners over here?
Yes. My last thought would be this: if a UFO descended on me, right, and said, "Hey, I'm an Earthling. Would you just give me one piece of advice, man, to help me get through this thing called life?" This is what I would tell him, her. It's very simple. Can I get one last drum roll? This is what I'll tell them. It's real simple. In life, we become what we give our attention to most of the time. I'll say it again. In life, we become what we give our attention to most of the time. So what's the takeaway from that insight? From this point forward, right, I want you to grab a hold of this maximum. Today is the first day of the rest of my life. So from this point forward, I will only put my attention to that which builds me up. I will only focus on my desires. I won't focus on disease. I won't focus on lack. If I have a loved one, a spouse, I won't focus on losing her or him. I will only focus on what I want to experience in my life. I have vision boards. I listen to positive motivation. If people gossip, I hear you. I'm sorry, but I can't take that into my consciousness. From this point forward, I will only focus on my desires. That's my takeaway.
Actually, I think so. I'll have to apologize on that particular thing. Is that because it is easy for people at times, wherein they say is that we can do these particular things, but what happens to somebody who's facing challenges,
Right.
who's maybe lost their parent, their brother, a sister, a wife, or child? Okay, or there has been, like, when we look around the turmoil which is taking place around the globe.
Right.
I know this is
Right.
going to extend from the time that we have been thought about,
Well,
but what
that's
would
a great question. That's a great question, right? And I'll answer it. Look. Oh, let me see. See, my brother. Me, I incorporate all religions, right? So I consider myself a Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, Taoist, Muslim. I incorporate it all. To me it's all the one, right? So here you got the Bhagavad Gita, right?
Bhagavad Gita? Yeah.
And you got Buddha,
The Buddha.
right? Both of which came from India, the original, the Holy Land. So how does this the question that you just asked? Why is it that you suppose from Buddhism to Hinduism, the emphasis is on meditation? Why? Because the yogi wants to control the attention, the thought waves. What does he say in the Yoga Sutras? If you can control the attention, the only thing that exists in our experience is the attention. So if like you asked, if you're dealing with some type of trauma, guess what? You don't have to focus on it, right? What did Viktor Frankl tell us in A Man's Search for
Search
Meaning?
for your meaning.
Even in the most dire situations, right, during the Holocaust, right, and it's so group, he could focus his attention on something better, and that allowed him a reprieve. It's all about the attention, my brother. That's why I advise if you can meditate just 3 minutes a day, just following your breath. The brain is a muscle. So what happens is eventually you'll become stronger and stronger. And the goal is to be able to control your attention. Throughout the day, my brother, I literally control what I put my attention on. Because if you control your attention, you control your experience. But right, where your attention goes, your energy flows.
Energy flows. Fantastic. Actually, I do this, what we call it as, for Hal Elrod, the Savers,
Yes,
wherein
yes.
first 10 minutes is the silence,
Okay.
affirmations,
Yeah,
visualizations, exercise. So I do
yes.
that, and like my day is like,
Yes. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
yeah.
Even when
So
you're running your marathon, right? Your attention. And I've never run a marathon, but I can imagine as it gets more and more challenging, you can feel the attention.
yeah, and the more you have attention that it's going to be a good run, the better
Right.
it is. But the
You got
moment you start focusing on your knee or your leg or your
oh,
breathing, kaboom!
that's
So
good.
anyway, genius, I would like to thank you so very much for your space and time at this point of time. Okay.
Right.
God bless you. You have a wonderful year, but I know we will be touching base soon again, because this is like a delicious meal for me. Is that I want to get back to it. So anyway, you take care, and thank you again for your space and time. And you have a lovely rest of the year and rest of life. Talk to you soon at some point of time. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you. Bye.